The first thing I want to show you is if you have the means and you want a tool that will help you with meetings and all those kind of things, this is the bomb right here, right here. This is called an iFly Tech, IFLYTEK AI Note. And you can push a button and record, which I'm going to record our meeting today. And then when I'm done, I'll be able to hit an AI summary and it'll give me a summary of the meeting. This will give you a summary of every meeting that you go on, every Zoom call. If you're in school, it will summarize your school sessions. Unbelievable. I use it for an online Christian school that I go to. But let me get mine set up because I'm going to record with this as well. What I'm going to do this morning is going to be unique in that, we've had a lot of different Saturday morning trainings and they've had different purposes. This one is going to be a sales 101. I'm going to share years and years of experience that I have in studying some of the best trainers in the world. Zig Ziglar and Grant Cardone and Hopkins and all these people. Some I've seen in person, some I have not. I've read books, been in seminars online, everything else, and I've learned a whole lot of things along the way, and it's helped me with my sales. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to get started. I have a PowerPoint I put together, and because of the fact that this is being recorded, anything that's here, you'll have available afterward. And one other thing at the end, we're going to do a time I'm going to handle objections on the fly, so that'll be fun. And then we're going to have a Q&R, I call it now, because I've learned that I don't have all the answers, but hopefully I can at least have a response. And then maybe we could get an answer. So getting ready right now to share my screen. The first thing is passion sells. And what I mean by that is not, that's more craziness. Passion is something that develops for different reasons inside of us. And we're going to talk about some of those things about passion, what passion is, and how to work with this. And so passion causes others to be more confident in their decisions. If they see that I'm kind of just being wishy-washy about, man, I think this is the greatest technology we've ever seen, then they're going to go, well, how much do you believe that? Do you really believe that? So, you know what? I think this might be the greatest technology I've ever seen, and I'm not, right? Or when you're talking and you go up all the time at the end of your sentences, I think this might be the greatest technology I've ever seen, but I'm thinking that, like that sounds like you're questioning yourself. You don't want to do that. You know what? I think this is probably the most prolific technology of our time, of our day. I mean, it is incredible. That's exciting. You know what? This is the most exciting. No, that is crazy. And some people are going to have different levels of how they interpret that. So we need to be who God created us to be. That's just that simple. We just need to be real. So our confidence, you can use that word, our confidence causes others to be more confident in their decisions. All right. So passion results in more sales. There's no question about it. The person who's more passionate than someone else is going to sell more people. It's just that simple. So passion, bottom line, passion results in more sales. And what I'm saying by that is that if I'm really convicted about what I'm doing and I'm persuaded and passionate, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about persuasion here in a little bit, then I'm going to have more sales than a person who doesn't have that. That's just a fact. It's just the way life is. But passion will also result in more solid sales. If you come across iffy and you're not real sure that this is something you really believe in or whatever, then that's going to be a little bit more shaky. You're going to have people that are going to either fall off, or people that were really going to go after it start to back up and say, I don't know if this is really for me. But passion will result also in a higher average sale. This is a big deal with me. With my insurance business, and I'm not sure if Corey's on, I know Josh is, they'll tell you that I have always had one of the highest average sales with any company I've ever worked with. And the reason is because I believe in what I'm doing to a level that I believe that if I don't do a certain thing for someone, that they're going to find themselves in a situation where it's not going to be good enough for them. So when I talk about a higher average sale, how do I get core, advanced, and premium 95% of the time? And there's people who get preferred customer or whatever 75% of the time, or whatever that might be. Part of that comes down to passion. Part of that comes down to that conviction that this is got to be more if it's going to be best for them. And I'll talk a little more about that here in a second too. But how do I do that? I use that Post-it note script that I talked about last time. I use the Post-it note, send them the funny thing of the deer looking at the road crossing sign, and then I go over, I use the script for the Post-it note, and then if they say, so what's next? Then I use my packages script that I develop. I use those religiously. I use them every single time, or I at least use some semblance of them because I wrote them. So I don't necessarily have to read them because I'm going to have the heart behind it. But passion needs to be developed and then grown. And this is important. So how do you develop passion for Lifewave? Number one, by studying the technology. Okay, studying the technology. I'm working on videos right now. I took, I don't know, 2 hours or something of David Schmidt doing a podcast with Meredith Oak. And I'm going to strip that down to about 5 different videos. One where he talks about the tree of life and the biblical code and some of those kind of things. So those can be separate and we can learn from it. But learning the technology, studying the technology, that's going to increase your passion. Studying David Schmidt himself really helps to be able to get inside the heart and the mind of the man. I like to talk about that. That's why my script that I did for the Post-it note script talks about him meeting with the Prince and King of Denmark and flying and meeting with the president of France and talking about drone technology. Why? Because he's a humanitarian. That increases value. By studying testimonies, and when I say immersing yourself in, this is what I did. I studied testimony after testimony after testimony when I first started with Lifewave, and that blew up my business right from the beginning. And many Zoom calls. Some of the Zoom calls are not going to develop your passion. I just have come to that conclusion. Some of them are going to blow up your passion, and it's going to be different for different people. You're going to hear one thing on a Zoom call that you go, that's incredible. I have not thought of it that way. So that's big too. And then through your personal experiences, I have so many different experiences. Marcia has so many different experiences. We were just talking this morning about how I used to, because I'm such a light sleeper, that I would find myself just laying awake once I get up in the morning. And now it's like, am I awake or am I asleep? I'm in that place. And then I go, wait a minute, I've been dreaming, so I had to have been asleep. And, so that's a change. And those are the stories that I just continue to tell. But I'm telling you, just keep getting your experience after experience after experience and sharing them with one another. That's why I do the weekly wonders on Facebook and encourage you to share that on your post and then on your wall. And then all of a sudden, you're going to have person after person after person interconnecting with us, and you're going to see all kinds of people. And then, of course, your brand partners' experiences. And, Randy and I were talking about this the other day when we were doing our Patchcast radio show. It's like, we're just wimps compared to, we don't have any testimony. We have a wonderful, wonderful life compared to everybody else. When you start hearing Bob and some of these people give their testimony, and Randy, you're on camera. You can nod if you agree with me, right? Remember that conversation we had? We just feel like, man, we don't have anything. But the key is, to us, it's everything. Being able to have that extra sleep, being able to have more energy, all those kind of things. So those experiences are going to grow your passion, and they're going to drive that passion. And the next thing is work a system. And that is a system, not my system. Work a system, whatever that is. I believe strongly in the systems I've developed. enough to where I believe I could sell them, to other companies for thousands of dollars. No question in my mind about it. I'm not going to do that. I'm not even going to strip it down, at least not for a while, and make it generic. I love Lifewave so much. I don't want anybody else to be able to use that. That's outside of Lifewave. I know that sounds kind of funny, but get a system and use that system. Don't wing it. Okay. You hear me say this a lot, but I can't apologize for it. People who are the most wealthy actors and actresses are people who studied scripts, learned them, stuck to them, and then they got to the point where they're so good that they could ad lib. But too many people start out with a business and ad lib and do that, on the fly right off out of the chute, and that's not a good thing. So understand need versus want. This is what has separated me from the other salespeople I've worked with in all of my different businesses. And I don't make that as an arrogant statement at all. Please understand that. It's just a fact. And the people that have worked with me will tell you that. Why? Because I have someone says, you know what, I think I want to do that starter pack or whatever. I just want to be a customer and see how it works. Not me. I'm not letting that happen. My own brother came to me and I said, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to be the bad guy that you come back to and say, this stuff doesn't work. When the experts say that we need to wear the patch 1 month for every decade we've been alive, I believe that. Those are the kind of things that have to go from being a little bit of knowledge to being reality. Okay. When you have a child, the parent says, don't eat that raw apple. It's really green. Your body's not going to like it. Oh yeah, I get it. I get it. So that person right there has a little bit of knowledge at that point. Then they take a bite of the apple, and now all of a sudden, they have revelation. I'm not doing that again. And so that's where the passion comes into play, is we go from that thing of, yeah, I've heard that, I understand that, to I know that, and I'm passionate about that. And so if someone says to me, I'm going to try it for a month, then what I'm going to say is, you need to look at this, and I'm going to send you a video. And then I send them the video from Rachel Maurice that we're all different. And then if they come back and say, well, I mean, that's all I can do. So when I approach someone and they say to me, I think what I need is probably the core, and they've got a family and they've told me already they want to do this and they want to do that, then I'm going to encourage them to go with advanced. If they tell me, you know what, I think that this is something I'm going to probably want to build, then I'm going to have them look at starting out maybe as advanced or even premium. But you've got to get past what they think is their need when it really is a want. But what I need for people to understand is that when you, right here, many offer what the prospects want, and it's not often what they need. And so trying to find what they need is by asking questions, getting a little bit of their take. Like this lady the other day, she told me, I want to do this, and I'm thinking about this, and probably this person that are in my life already. And I said, so what we want to do then is we want to start out, we want to put you on what we call the advanced. That's going to help you guys. That's going to give you a 90-day run. Plus we can put the auto ship in place, and you become so passionate and convicted that this is what is best for that person, and you pursue that. So this is a big deal right here. This changed my life, that you can pay too much for a product, but you can also pay too little. So you go out and you buy something because it's cheaper and it breaks, and you go out and buy the same thing 3 times, but wisdom's going to tell you not to do that. So you're going to end up spending the money again anyway. So in the long run, you're going to spend way more money. But a lot of people sell someone too little, rather than, they're afraid of, oh, that's going to be too much. And we don't want too much. If someone's saying, I'm going to use these patches and I've got a few other people I'm probably going to share it with and whatever, that's great. But when I get to looking at, what is something that's going on in their life or whatever, and then they say, I really want to build this thing big right away. I don't want to put them in a core. But if they're saying to me, you know what, I think I want to do that premium, and they're not looking at building right away and they want just a great experience or whatever, I'm going to probably step that down to advanced, where that's where you're talking about where they could be paying too much for a product. But most times, and it doesn't make any difference what product it is, most people pay too little for a product rather than too much. And then when that happens, that hurts your reputation because it doesn't work right for them, or hurts the company's reputation or whatever. So we always want to be thinking what is truly in their best interest. And that's by just being in tune to that little knower inside of you that you go, hey, you know what? I need to think a little bit more about this. Never underestimate. This is one of the things that changed my life more than anything in sales. Never underestimate someone's desire or means to provide for their family. We have situations in our life where if I had somebody come to me and say, if you could give me this much money, we could do this to help this person in your life. I'd do everything but rob a bank. We don't know what means people have. I'll never forget, Josh and I used to do alarm systems, and we went to meet with this older couple, and he said, we're on a fixed income. I said, I understand that, but it's important to realize that we really want the best experience for that couple. And we don't want them to have a window that's not protected or something else, right? Or if they want a camera or whatever. And so we went full circle. Josh and I went out to talk together, looked at how many windows they had, kind of did some math, came back in. And then he said something, and we just basically got them talking about each other, how long they've been married and whatever. And all of a sudden the sale took place. And he wrote us a check for several $1,000s in his primary checking account. So when people say, oh, I'm on a fixed income, or I don't have much money, or you think they don't, you just don't know. So you present with no preconceived ideas whatsoever. I'm going to talk a little more about that here in a second. And then what happens is they make the decision, but you're going to guide them in the direction that's best for them. It doesn't mean that every single time they're going to go along with you or agree with you that it's what's best for them. That's okay. I'm not saying that you do these things, you're going to always 100% of the time get the win, or whatever you want to call it, get what you believe is best for them. They still are ultimately going to make that decision. So one of the things is who's selling whom. There's always a sale that takes place. Whenever you go and you go to buy a product, if you buy the product, someone sold you. If you didn't buy the product, you sold someone else. And that's just a fact. And it's just different in different situations. So remember that whole thing that a sale takes place every time. In some cases, the sale might be made by us, but it's delayed. And it will happen in the future. And that's okay. We don't want to anger someone, because we don't have things go the way we want it to go. And then all of a sudden we burn that bridge. When we were in Cersei, I talked a lot about keeping bridges built of relationship and then growing those, ongoing. So this is incredible. Your 100% persuasion is what can keep this from happening. I'm going to, and I'm not saying it happens 100% of the time, but it's going to happen most of the time, that I'm going to offer and get the sale for the person who, the person I'm talking to, for what's best for them. Sorry. I use the example of Paul. When Paul said, there's many times when Paul uses the phrase, I am persuaded. And that word in the original language means that I was persuaded so much that I'm still living in a state of persuasion today. And that's the persuasion that we have to have. I am so persuaded that this person needs to do an advanced because of what they've shared with me, that I'm going to stay with this until they feel pressure. And sometimes I'll say, you know what? If you're feeling pressure, I don't want you to feel that. What you're feeling is my passion and my desire for people to have what's best for them. And I never want them to mistake that for pressure. Okay. And I've used that a lot when I'm doing sales for or health insurance, life insurance too. Paul was so persuaded that when he said, I am persuaded, that was something that happened in the past, had ramification all the way up to and including the present. And all of those things I talked about in that first part of the training, all the different Zooms and studying the technology, all of those kind of things are what are going to create that persuasion in us. Projecting your preconceptions on others. This is something that we do often. And if we're not careful, this will cause someone to spend too little. People can only afford what I could. There's no way that I could do a premium. So there's no way that everybody else I talk to would want to do a premium. Or there's no way that someone's going to feel that strong about it right out of the chute that they're willing to spend this much money, or they're willing to go and talk to people or whatever. Those preconceptions cannot be projected onto other people. That will destroy that bridge big time. Here's another one. People won't spend any money, any more money than a certain amount. Those are my preconceptions. That's my projection that I have, that I buy as if I was in their shoes from my own standpoint. I can't do that. If I'm approaching a millionaire, I don't want to talk to him about trying to save $100. That's going to be mocking to him. But if I'm talking to somebody that I know is probably fairly poor, I don't want to talk to him about a premium either. And so that is all part of that. Passion isn't about selling the biggest thing every time. I'm not saying that. I never would say that. Passion is being convicted and convinced and persuaded for what's best for that individual, whether they accept it or not. Then everyone will not want to start working the business until they experience it. That's not true. Joe Duggar shared the business with Marcia and I, and when he said jump, I said, how high? I'm a ready, fire, aim kind of guy. If I trust the person that I'm with. If you've got a person who you know trusts you, they're going to probably be more of a ready, fire, aim in that relationship with you. But they could be the opposite personality where they're going to test everything and they're going to do whatever, and you accept that and you go on from there. So that's the first thing, is everyone will not want to start working the business. That's wrong. The other one is everyone's going to want to start working the business right away. Both of those come from our own preconception. My preconception is I believe in it. I'm passionate about it. I trust someone. I'm diving in. He tells us about the product. He tells us some testimonies and how excited he's been. You know, and granted, this is a doctor that helps. But then I said, what'd you do? And then he told me, and I said, well, I'm doing that too. And then I jumped in at the deep end of the pool. And even in the package options script that I wrote, I talk to people about diet. I don't know that you necessarily want to dive in at the deep end of the pool from what I've heard here, but I don't know that I would wade, or whatever. And then I think maybe the middle of the pool, probably the low end, whatever would be good. And I've got all that written in to the script itself. But it's just things that will help people be comfortable getting to the place that they need to be rather than that they think they need to be, which is really where they want. And sometimes our wants aren't what's best for us. I want a certain thing, but when Joe says, Pat, you might want this for your health, but this is what you need. And he's convicted and he's passionate about that. We need to have that same kind in ours. And you'll see there's a continual thread here going back and forth, and that's the thread of passion, right? Now, use us versus you to disarm dangerous thinking. One of the least effective things that a pastor can do is stand in the pulpit. And I've been in situations where the pastor does this, and I've been in situations where the pastor does what I'm going to do next. You people need to, that's very condescending, that's very arrogant, that is not coming across in humility, right? People would come to Jesus and say, what do I need to do? And he would say, if you want this, you should do this and whatever. But he didn't command them to do those things. He told them this is going to give you a better life and blah, 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 blah. And so if you use us, you can disarm dangerous thinking. So what do I mean by that? I want to make sure that it works for me before I tell anyone. You know what I say when that? And I'm not saying this is going to work every time, but it's the truth. And there has to be a conviction of it for that to happen. And this is the truth that I have. You know what? My wife and I talked about it. And what we found is that if we waited for us, there's people that are in our life that never would experience a miracle. We don't know if we didn't know if we were ever going to experience anything. And we didn't want to rob anyone else from having a miracle. So I just tell everyone, I encourage you, just start sharing it with people, because 90, whatever, 85, whatever percent of the time, something happens. But these are things that do happen. And that's where you come back to that Post-it note script. You know, in 2 days, 4,000 genes reset. Do you think it's possible for nothing to happen if that's the case? And again, there's my passion coming back again. And so if they're saying, I want to make sure it works before I tell anyone, I'm not going to bust them over that, but I'm going to give them my approach to that rather than saying, well, let me tell you what's going to happen if you do that. That's going to come across condescending. That's going to come across judgmental. But if you say, you know what, my wife and I, or you know what, I was thinking about that same thing. And when I first started out, I thought, you know what if it doesn't work for me? What if I'm not a one-patch wonder and something doesn't happen for me immediately? I know a lot of people who really are hurting and care about those people. None of those people would be touched and helped today. So you're addressing their objection basically by sharing your own story. So that's how us can disarm you. That's a big deal, that us versus you. And we've all been around pastors who stand in the pulpit and they say, you people, you need to start doing that and blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what, buddy? You got 3 fingers, 4 fingers, whatever, pointing back at you. And that's where hypocrisy comes into play. But if I come humbly and I say, you know what? We feel the same way. We did. We felt the same way. So what you do is you flip this thinking by bringing yourself into the perspective. All of a sudden now you're the good guy, not the bad guy. You're not judgmental. You're not being a hypocrite, and you're not sounding condescending. You're being there, and you become a co-buyer with them basically. And then what I want to do is just handle some objections. And I'm going to do my best to handle these objections on the fly. And then we'll take a time for question and response after that. But if you've got an objection that you hear, I'd like to be able to handle it. And you know what I love about this? I said we're going to do response because I don't have all the answers. And Randy and I talk a lot, and we come up with a lot of things together. A lot of the materials that I have are things that I've done by working with other people on our team and ideas they have. So I think that's a really huge thing. If someone has a comment or an objection that they hear, maybe we can work together on best ways to be able to answer that when that comes up. I just handled one of the most common objections, and that is, I want to see if it works for me.
Terry Fletcher here.
Hey, Terry.
One of the things I hear a lot is I don't want auto ship. People being afraid of having the auto ship. And I need some things to overcome that. So
yeah, and I think the key to that is going to be the heart is going to be the passion behind it from us that they need it. And that doesn't mean they're always going to do it. I have people that don't do auto ship too. Um, but it's going to be an exception more than a rule.
Yeah.
But my thing is going to be, man, I understand that. And gosh, with the economy the way it is, everything else. But and here's the other thing, the more that you use my post-it note script and send them that post-it note and send them that picture of the deer crossing and go through that and read that script and go through those points of what's happening and get to that 6 month, the more of a chance you're going to have that auto ship is going to be easier for them. And
Okay.
then when they start pushing back, I say, you know what? Here, bottom line is this company has the best customer service. I'm telling you, it's incredible. And you could get your auto ship set up, and then you get a handful of days before it. For whatever reason, you decide you don't want to do it. You get a hold and they'll stop it. But at least you've got that going in the meantime. So it's just another thing that you're handling by your passion being the driving factor, your persuasion, you're being convinced that this is absolutely in their best interest.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I hope that answers it because it's tough, Terry. It really is because it's a heart-wrenching thing because you know that people are taking a step away from our goal for them to stay on these patches a decade for every I mean a month for every decade they've been
Yeah,
alive. But ultimately, they got a free will and they get to make that decision.
that's true. Thank you.
Yep. Probably the most often asked question, I would say. Very good.
Hey, Pat.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, I just wanted to add to that about auto ship and addressing that objection. Uh, I think I tell almost everyone when I'm talking about the opportunity with X39, and I'm talking about their health mainly, but I tell them about the business opportunity too, just because I want them to know the full picture and all the benefits they could have. And so, talking about the length of time that they need to be on it is one of the things, like you said, that is helpful to frame that conversation. And I usually tell them 6 months to a year,
Yeah.
to really see everything. And so I want them to think in terms of, start with the X30 and just do that one alone if that's if money's the biggest in terms of what am I going to spend this next year to get this. And sometimes that changes their thinking from, an advance to a premium or a core to an advance. But also, I tell them, if you really need to stay active to be able to realize the compensation. You may not think you're going to work the business, but you need to have that opportunity if you change your mind. And
Yeah.
if you start today, then that sales volume is going to start accumulating below you. And they don't have to understand the whole compensation plan. So don't try and explain it then. But I just tell them, this compensation plan is really remarkable and they pay you weekly. And the sooner you hit manager, which is getting two people on your left and two on your right, you start bringing in revenue that can actually pay for your patches. And
Yeah.
then it's
Yeah.
actually providing that income instead of costing you money. Now, they may not want to hear anything about the business side, and that's okay. But I just tell them that I'd leave that as sort of a incentive and just say, if you start this today, you're going to have sales volume building below you continually, and this auto ship guarantees you staying in the compensation
Yeah.
plan. And so it's really important for them to know that, because I think it may change the way they think about it.
Yeah, that's really well said. And it brings up something else too. I'm glad you said that. For me, it goes back to that post-it note script that I use because in that script, I go and I ask the question, if you could have all of this, right? I mean, and we're not talking about stem cell injections and some of the other therapies or whatever. We're talking about having all of this for about $600 for 6 months. I've created so much value that they are, and I'm talking about the initial upfront part. then they're ongoing monthly or whatever. Or you could save all of this for $1,000 or whatever you want to do and then include auto ship in your mind. That is totally up to you. But the point is, when you have this much value and this much dollars that it costs you, that's when a sale takes place. But when you got this much value and this much dollars in the mind of the person, nothing's happening. So when they start to go, you know what? You just gave me that whole list of all those things that happen in 6 months. I'm thinking long term, I'm going 6 months. And when I tell everyone too, is that you, Joe, told us that this is something that we want to look at for a year, a minimum of 6 months and to the year. And so that really makes a difference with that. I appreciate you saying that because I usually do that. But the more value you build, Joe's building that value on the front end. When he's talking about the possibility, you've got like a franchise, if you ever decide to do it, you're going to need the patches over a longer period of time. You're creating value. You're going to have all of these things happen, but you've got to do more than just talk about the patch with that. You've got to talk about the benefit of the patch. And that's what that thing on that Post-it note does. It goes, right? It goes 2 hours, 2 days, 3 months or 6 weeks, 3 months, right? 6 months. And you're creating a stack of value that way. And they start going, man, it would cost me $5,000 or $10,000 or more to have that same thing happen if I go and have a procedure. So those are the kind of things to me that are going to create that ongoing passion that these people that I'm talking to, I care about them and I want them to experience the best. They've got to look at this long term. And to look at it long term, it's going to cost money, but the value is worth it because of the benefits. So I think that's really, really important. And I think that's something too I need to do more, Joe. I used to just always talk the business side. I think now I hold it back a little bit more than I should. So that's priceless. Anything else you want to add to that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's it. I really think it's, going back to what you were saying about not prejudging, try and just take your bias out of that conversation.
Yeah.
And even they may even say, I'm not interested in the business. And I had a conversation with some people I know well, and they're grandparents of some good friends of ours. And I said, well, and they have plenty of money. And I said, yeah, I understand. I said, but this is something that is like an investment in a lot of ways. It's better than a 401k. It's better than stock in Walmart in
Yeah.
1980. So this could be something that you pass on to your kids or your grandkids. And then when I said that, there was a light bulb that went off. And so I think you just want to basically think about the patch and LifeWave in general as a two-prong benefit. Like there's great benefit on the health side, there's great benefit on the business side or the financial side, and you really need to be able to present both to give people a good understanding of what they're potentially buying.
Yeah, and I've been talking about, we've been doing this on our show, Randy and I, think about it. You want to invest in a tech stock, you can invest in your own tech business, having
Right.
your own tech business.
That's a good way to frame it.
Yeah, and it gets people's attention too, for sure. And
Hey,
then,
Pat.
yeah,
Hey, this is Roger.
hey,
I have a question about people signed up as preferred customers or um, people who have been buying the patches elsewhere. What is a good tactic to convince them they need to move up to core? And how is that the best way to facilitate?
yeah, I was going to say one other thing after Joe said that too. This is another way that I approach this is I talk about people are looking for value. And the more higher the level that you are at when you start looking at the maintenance packs and different things like that, those are the greatest value. The least value is going to be something that's on the retail side, right?
Right.
And so what I look at with that is you may not think, like Joe said, you may not think that you're going to want to share the business side of this, but this opens the door. And you can tell the story. Danny the other night told a story of somebody that had like over $1 million in one of their legs. And they'd stayed active. They hadn't ever done anything with the business, but they've had this massive group that was building. Um, and so what happens then, if you can take that and convert that into them catching the vision, catching the dream, we cast the vision, the people pick it up and then they run with it. I mean, that's a biblical thing too, right?
Mhm.
One, gets the vision, the other one writes it down on tablets, and then someone runs with it. And I think that that's what we're all learning. We're growing in this vision. We're coming up with new ideas, and we're writing them down, and we're recording them, and then we can take off. So what Joe is talking about, I think is so crucial, is that these people realize that this is more than just an expense. That's what I'm looking for. It's an opportunity to get their patches for free, to get their patches and help people that they care about. And I would always bring that in there. So, can you think of some people that right now that have problems with blood pressure, blood sugar, pain, whatever, and kind of go through a few things and kind of plant that in their mind? And they're going to, pretty much all the time say, oh, yeah, my mom, my Jew, whoever, like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Need to help them come up with reasons.
Yeah, you're kind of like doing the old Ben Franklin close, laying the positive and the negative next to each other, and there's tons more positive with this. And this is what's going to happen if you do this. And if you decide down the road that you do want to have a business, wow, you've got all that already in place.
Right.
But more important than that is you've got the patches you need for the length of time that you need to use them.
Yeah, Pat, I would add to that. If someone's wanting to do preferred customer or, um, not anything but a brand partner, I always tell them in that very initial conversation, I try and let them know your best price is going to be to do it as a brand partner.
Yep.
And you can get it, if you buy it in bulk, you can get it down to $87.50 a month for your X39. But it's basically, I present it as there's no reason not to do it as a brand partner, despite whether you think whatever you think about the business, because it's your best price. So I think when people know that, the vast majority of them are going to do it as a brand partner.
Yeah, for me, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, the only reason someone should ever do something other than a brand partner is if they're just poor. I just don't see any other reason because, if they're just going to try it, that's not good. We just don't want that. That's not enough. If they're gonna do that, plus they're gonna be on auto ship and they're committed to doing that for 6 months, that would probably be the borderline for me. But that's not the best value for them either. And most people, depending on the circle, and I'm going to bet the circle that you guys are a part of, that are part of your life, for the most part, they can afford it. And so you take that part out of the equation, then what's the most important thing to people who have some means? Value. Value. What is the best bang for the buck? How do I get down to, like he said, $83 a sleeve and things like that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you on the, considering where they're coming from a financial standpoint. I just think if finances are the biggest problem, this could be their answer to that problem too. So,
Yeah.
depending on, but I understand, and so, I think helping them be creative about how to do it, but if they know it's the best price to do it as a brand partner, they can do it. They can do the $25, entry fee or whatever you want to call it, and then buy the sleeves one at a time, and they're still looking at the same price or less than what they would do if they were buying it retail or buying it as a preferred customer.
Yeah. And ultimately, the best price is going to be when they get growing the business and they get them for free.
Right, which could happen quickly if they
Yeah.
really if they catch the vision.
Yeah. And that's what I try to do all the time. I try to get that, cast, like you said. It's the right word. Anyone else? This is a great time for all of us. We're learning together. This will be good. I'm excited about it. This is a tool that I wanted to have so that everybody can just take some of my experiences and some of the things I've learned. Like I said, I've spent thousands of dollars over the years to learn from the best of the best, and I want to pay it forward. So, been very blessed with a lot of trainers in my life. So we'll make sure that everybody has opportunity ongoing. You can share this with your brand partners as you build your businesses, and we'll take some of these other trainings that we've been doing and make sure that people have access to all of that. So we appreciate all of you. We have an amazing team. We really do. And it's a blessing to be a part of this. And really thank you again, Joe, for opening this door to me and Marsh, because it's changed our lives in every way and our family. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope this has been a blessing.